We're really excited to be hosting this for everybody. My name's Allison McManus. I'm the research director at the Freedom Initiative. The Freedom Initiative is a organization based in Washington, D.C., though we have staff all over the world, really. And our aim is to advocate on behalf of political prisoners in the Middle East and North Africa. So we thought that this was a particularly important event, given that President Biden is on his way now to the region and will be in Jeddah on Friday in Saudi Arabia for the Gulf Cooperation Council plus Egypt, Iraq, and Jordan. We'll be focused on Egypt and Saudi Arabia in the discussion today. All of the countries, pretty much all of the countries whose leaders he'll be meeting, have presided over human rights abuses. And of course, Egypt and Saudi Arabia have the infamous and notorious distinction of being some of the worst of the worst. So we're happy to take the time today to discuss some of the cases of political prisoners who are detained there, and hopefully to put some pressure on President Biden to say their names and to spend as much time thinking about those detained as he does about some of the leaders that he'll be meeting. So again, we're going to have a great group of people here, and I already see quite a lot of guests. This is my first time hosting one of these Twitter Spaces, so I appreciate you all bearing with me as we kind of figure out some of the technical details. One of the first people that I wanted to welcome is Alia Hathloul. And Alia, I'm inviting you to speak, so I think you may have gotten a notification that would allow you to unmute and introduce yourself. Let us know if you're having any trouble. Not sure if this is working quite yet, but I see that we have Alia here, who's one of our speakers. We have Yasmin Omar, who will also be joining us as a human rights lawyer and the UN and Regional Mechanisms Manager at the Committee for Justice. We have Solafa Magdi. I see Solafa here as well. Solafa is an award-winning journalist, woman human rights defender, and former political prisoner. I see we have Rami Shath here, also an Egyptian human rights activist, Egyptian-Palestinian human rights activist, and former political prisoner. While we are getting our ducks in a row on the technology side of things, I know, Yasmin, you've had quite a lot of experience, both on the ground in Egypt and by using international mechanisms to try to raise the cases of political prisoners and to seek release. I wonder if you can maybe speak to us a little bit about your work, and what have been some of the challenges and opportunities in trying to raise awareness about human rights abuses and detention in Egypt. I'll turn things over to you now.
Thank you so much, Allison. First, thanks to the Freedom Initiative for creating this space to call on President Biden to say their names, those who are wrongfully detained and facing grave human rights abuses in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. I think this is time to use to first derive on achievements on legal mechanisms. As you said, I'm the UN and Regional Mechanisms Officer at the Committee for Justice, an organization based in Geneva. And what we do is that we file cases to the UN and other legal mechanisms, use them to get legal opinions and resolutions stating that these abuses are in fact in violation to international human rights law, therefore highlighting states' commitment towards abiding by this law and considering it in its diplomatic and bilateral relations. Therefore, it's time to talk to call on President Biden to acknowledge UN resolutions issued for detainees like Ala Abdel Fattah, who enters his 103 days of hunger strike today in objection to unfair treatment, to abuses, to torture, to ignoring his hunger strike. Human rights lawyers like Amr Imam, who has been in solitary detention for 1,000 days today. For people who are affiliated with the US, either they are relatives to US citizens or presidents in the US, like Salah Sultan, father of American human rights defender Muhammad Sultan, and also a PhD student Walid Salim, who has been wrongfully banned from traveling for years now, with no idea what is the legal basis to this. I think this is a significant time to be raising these voices, to be speaking of these cases. And I believe that working only with legal mechanisms without influencing those using these legal mechanisms to influence political decision, I think it's the right moment to do this now.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, and thank you so much for raising some of these cases. We will be using this hashtag, say their names. Obviously, this was a hashtag that was became very popular around the movement to raise awareness about police violence against the Black community in the US. The names that we're raising right now, they are very much alive. They're just either detained, wrongfully imprisoned, or on travel ban. And I do want to turn things over now to Aliyah Hathloul. Aliyah, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak now. We're very happy to have you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Aliyah, are you still there with us? I think it says maybe there's some connectivity issues there. I think hopefully we'll get Aliyah back here shortly. Aliyah is the sister of Loujain Hathloul, the famous Saudi woman human rights defender who is also detained. I know we also have here Solafa Magdi. Solafa, would love to hear from you as well about any of those who you were detained with, whose names you want to raise, and if you wanted to speak about your efforts, particularly to share information about the situation for women in.
Yes. Could you hear me, Alison?
I can, yes. Hi, Solafa.
Yes.
Great to have you.
Hi, how are you? At the first, thank you so much for this invitation to be part of this great opportunity. At first, I would like to talk about case number 173, especially travel ban for a many human rights defender in Egypt, such as Markaz Al Nadim Center. I'm sorry. I would like to say the Egyptian government has relentlessly deployed a wide range of practices to suppress the human rights movement in Egypt. Among them, the 11 years long NGOs foreign funding case number 173, as I told you, and illegal measures including media summer campaigns against a lot of human rights defenders in Egypt on the basis of fabricate terrorism charges. Also, the Egyptian government boasted that the case has been closed. In reality, this is not the case. While a small number have been accused on paper, several of them remain on travel bans and have their assets frozen. Some suffering both. Additionally, more than 20 human rights defenders are prevented from leaving the country. Plus, a number of them faces the possibility of criminal trials. In addition, several human rights defenders remain in pre-trial detention, such as Haytham Mohammadin and Amr Imam, as my colleague and friend Yasmin said today. Both have been recycled on new cases while in prison. Additionally, Muhammad al-Baqir, founder of Adala Center for Human Rights, has been sentenced to 4 years in prison on one case, while his detention is being renewed on a second one. In the end, I would like to say the solidarity campaign carried by NGO is essential not only for the freedom of a human rights defender, but the more important is how this campaign helps to integrate into society, and this aspect is missing now, how we can develop this. Finally, I need to say, kindly continue your solidarity. There are many and many others in jail need our support, and they still need our voices. All nations should continue to support each other in this world so that we can attain what is the best for humanity. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you so much, Salafa. And I'm just going to repeat some of the names that have been raised already by Yasmin and by Salafa. Ala Abdel Fattah, who's an activist in Egypt. He's on his 103rd day of hunger strike. Amr Imam, who has just passed 1,000 days in prison in pretrial detention. Muhammad al-Baqir, who's a Egyptian human rights lawyer, also detained. Haytham Mohammadin, a labor rights activist and lawyer in Egypt, who's been detained. And we've also mentioned several cases of those on travel ban, including Loujain al-Hathloul in Saudi Arabia, and many of those in Egypt. Members of civil society. We at the Freedom Initiative actually just published a report on this alongside the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy, and Human Rights Watch and Fair Square also published a similar report mentioning cases like Karim Inara, Ghasser Rizk, and Mohammed Bashir of the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, as well as researcher Walid Salam. These are just some of the names that we hope President Biden will raise not only in his visit this week, but also afterwards. I know we have several others who are here who would like to speak about cases. I've sent some invites to speak. I believe you just have to accept those via Twitter. If anybody else would like to speak or raise cases, you can do so by requesting to speak, and we'll go ahead and allow that as hosts. We also recognize that there are many who are not comfortable speaking because of their own security concerns, particularly that might already be, or that might still be in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere in the region. Please feel free to send us a private message. You can contact me directly, and we'd be more than happy to raise those cases as well. I will turn things over now to Rami Shaath. Rami is joining us, I believe, from Paris. We worked on Rami's case quite a lot when he was detained. Rami, are there any messages that you'd want to give to Biden? Any other names that you'd want to raise, or anything you want to share with the group?
Thank you, Allison. I want to remind Mr. Biden that he was elected on a liberal rights platform, and he differentiated himself from the Trump administration and their practices. These are the kind of dictators that were supported by Trump, the Sisi of Egypt, the bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, and the apartheid regime of Israel. He's going to a worst possible meeting with the worst kind of people he can meet. We are urging him to pressure those goons to end human rights abuses in their country. This is an opportunity. We would have preferred that Mr. Biden do not meet with General Sisi in Saudi Arabia, but since he does, he should remember to remind him with Ala Abdel Fattah. He should remember to remind him with Muhammad Ramadan, Haytham Mohammadin, Amr Imam, Muhammad al-Assas, Muhammad al-Baqir. I would want to mention Abdel Men'em Abu al-Futuh, who had a presidential candidate who had 2 heart attacks in this last week. I want to remind him with Tawfiq Ghanem in Aqrab, who is dying out of negligence. I want to remind him that 5 people died this last month and 3 till now because of bad treatment or because of abuse or torture in Egypt. I want to remind him that reprisals against family and the kidnapping of families are still going on. I want to tell him that just this last week, 103 Egyptian detainees who were disappeared for months just appeared in court after they flushed them out after long time of disappearance and torture that's still going on in Egypt. This is the kind of messages he should send Sisi. End this human rights abuses, end this gangster tactics that's happening to Egypt and to Egyptians unlawfully and against all the laws and international laws. I want to remind him that people are still going to court today under the security and emergency law that has been banned and cancelled more than 9 months ago. Nevertheless, people are still being tried against the same law. I want to remind him that Egypt is not governed by law anymore, that the abuses bypasses all kind of laws, and those crimes do not fall in time. I want to tell him that Egypt is under a major political and economic and social problem because of the corruption and bad management of the military regime. And this is the time to pressure him into shaping up regarding human rights, ending the fear tactics and the fear republic that he built in Egypt, opening up Egypt to a more liberal democracy that Egypt is deserve and due. I want to remind him that this is the only way, if in the interest of the United States of America, we have stability in the Middle East, we have peace in the Middle East, we have to end this gangster tactics. I want to remind him with all those people, I want to remind him with Baqir and Amr Imam, the 2 lawyers that have been arrested while defending other detainees. I want to remind him with Salah Sultan that is suffering from negligence, Hisham Fuad, Aisha Shatir. I cannot end with tens and tens of names that still rotting in prison out of their opinion and out of their conscience. Please end this and make this a clear message to Sisi, to Salman, and to Bennett to end those human rights issues in their countries and in their territories and under their governments, especially General Sisi, where I have suffered with 60,000 Egyptian prisoners. They're still rotting in prison with no hope unless there is a major interference to end it.
Thank you so much, Rami. Thank you so much. Your perspective is always so valuable, and all of the names that you mentioned, particularly those who are suffering medical negligence, particularly those who have already died in prison. There's no need for any more to die, and we hope that President Biden would take this message. We've talked quite a bit about Egypt, and I know Elia has rejoined us here. Elia, do you want to speak a bit about your sister and about the situation in Saudi? Over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I have a very bad internet connection here. So yeah, I was saying that I'm the sister of Lujain Al Hathloul, a Saudi activist. She was in jail for almost 3 years. It was not her first time. So mainly, basically, she was sent to jail because of her advocacy for women's rights in Saudi Arabia. She was freed last year in February 2021. What I wanted to highlight today is the fact that there is a travel ban, it is used against the prisoners and their family, but there is no legal basis. For example, my parents are under travel ban even before my sister was arrested. They are almost more than 4 years on travel ban. We just learned recently who issued the travel ban. So there is no transparency at all in the judiciary system. And this lack of transparency it's not good for Saudi Arabia. It's not good for the ally of the United States. So the issue of the travel ban is that it is used to silence people. What we wanted to remove this travel ban from on my family. The issue is that we do not know how. Also, another issue is that we do not know at all for how long it would last, and we do not know what we need to do in order to remove this travel ban. So the opacity of the legal system in Saudi Arabia needs to be improved. We count as Saudi Arabia is an ally of the United States. The allies, they can influence each other. They can have they need to work on common values. So that the trip of Biden to Saudi Arabia is also to discuss those common values that Saudi Arabia all the time pretend to have those universal values, and on the ground we see that those universal values are not respected at all. We see that we sometimes we have really hard to know which entity or which public administration we need to contact, and if we have an issue. For example, when my sister was sent to jail, it took my parents several weeks before knowing whom to contact. Though directly after her arrest, the Saudi, close to the Saudi regime, they published many false news about her being a treasure, for treason. So what we would like really to the main message for Biden for his visit to Saudi Arabia is to remind Saudi Arabia, a friendly reminder, because of their historical relationship that they have, to improve their legal system, to work on the situation of human rights, to consider that people who speak up are not an enemy. The enemy is the one who is fighting Saudi Arabia in Yemen, the one who's launching rockets against Saudi interest on the oil refineries. It is against Saudi interest and against American interest. But and my sister and all the political people, political activists, they are not launching rockets against American interests in Saudi Arabia. They want instead to have a country where you can seek your rights safely, and you can even do business safely, because the political prisoners, they were asking for more transparency for the economic system in Saudi Arabia, for the trade in Saudi Arabia. American people, if they want to do business in Saudi Arabia, they can also suffer because of this opacities. So sometimes it's not only top-down approach to improve the country's situation, but it's also bottom-up, because the people who are on the ground, they know the best the obstacles, they know the best where their interest can be. So I would repeat again, is we would like to the United States is one of the main ally for Saudi Arabia, and we would like to remind the United States that your allies, do not forget to remind your allies to work on common universal values, because what you hear from some people in Saudi Arabia does not reflect the really bad reality that we are facing today.
Thank you so much, Alia. And I think you really hit on one of the ironies that we can identify with this trip, is that, you know, President Biden is going to the region in the interest of stability, or what he says is in the interest of stability. The irony is that so many of the issues that you touched on we actually see are exported and shared across the region to actually create less stability. If we're talking about the degradation of the rule of law, which leads to the abuse of travel bans and arbitrary detention, where there are situations like your sisters not even being able to know who to go to challenge. And this is something that we find in Egypt as well. The closure of public space and the use of anti-terrorism legislation as a pretext for imprisonment, or as a pretext to criminalize peaceful participation in politics, the economy, or even just in society. These are ills that we see across the region, and very much appreciate your message to President Biden that to combat these ills, to say the names of the detainees, to say the names of those who are on travel ban, who should be those who are prioritizing as a way to engender stability and engender greater security in the region, not necessarily the leaders who are imprisoning them or keeping them on travel ban. Once again, want to remind folks who are just joining, we are using the hashtag Say Their Names as a way to draw attention to cases of detainees, political prisoners, or those who are on travel ban as Biden prepares to go to Jeddah. Aliyah, did you want to add something else? I see that you've unmuted.
Yes, if I can, I would like also to remind the American president is that visiting Saudi Arabia, it gives a signal. Maybe it's not the signal that he wanted to do, but it gives the signal to the Saudi regime that they are rehabilitated again on the international scene. They are back again on international scene, and it empowers them as well. And empowering kind of dictatorship, it's not the way that America can get their interest back again. So we see that I do not want to go into other problems, but we see that if your ally is not a trustful and reliable one, when you need him, when you need your ally, you already empowered him to be a big dictator, and when there is an issue like the war in Russia and Ukraine, you need more support from them. You already gave them the signal that they can do whatever they want. So it is now. I feel that it is the United States who is paying the bill by empowering Saudi regime, mainly MBS, giving him like kind of authorization to be back on the international scene. So I think it needs to be very important to remind the ally that an ally is someone who is reliable, and reliable means that you can trust, and when you have issue, you can count on each other. Today we can see that unfortunately the United States kind of begging the Saudi Arabia, and I think it is the result of the American policy in the region by empowering dictators, by empowering unreliable people. So I think they need to reconsider their relationship, and they need to really analyze and understand the personality of their counterpart, because unstable or unreliable people, they can make big issue for the United States later, even worse than today.
Thank you so much, Aliyah. Thank you so much for your insights there. To remind folks, if you do have something that you'd like to add, you can go ahead and request to speak. And we do have some other folks that we're really looking forward to hearing from as well, particularly some of the family members who have parents detained. We have here Rahma Fatin. Rahma, do you want to share with us a little bit about your your dad's story, and any message that you might have for President Biden.
Of course. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me this chance to talk about my father. My father is, his name is Saif Fatin. He's a professor of environmental engineering at Zuhail University. He has always been an academic. He got his PhD from MIT in 2000 or 2002. And we lived in the US for a couple of years before he decided to move back to Egypt because he wanted to benefit the people of his country. My father has been an intellectual, and like any youth during the revolution, the 2011 revolution, he participated, and that led him also to participate in Morsi's government in 2012 as an advisor to the Minister of Higher Education. But other than that, he was not that active, and he was not very dangerous to the regime in a way. Despite all that, in 2018, 14th of November, he was arrested from our house, and he was disappeared for 9 months, where we did not know anything about his whereabouts. We had no contact with him whatsoever. And after 9 months, he was surfaced in a prison, and he was presented to a judge, where he was surprised to find himself in the case. So that's called the Hope, Qadiyat al-Aman, number 930. It's a pretty famous case, and there are many intellectuals and people from different like political ideologies and backgrounds that are like mixed in this case, which shows that it's not based on anything solid. So he found himself in this case, and he was never questioned. He was never questioned, except the very first day he was arrested. He was interrogated and, of course, tortured. And for the whole period of his detention and his disappearance, he was never questioned again. So he does not even know why he's there and what his crime really is, because no one asked him and tried to really find the truth to see whether he's innocent or guilty. He still is in jail right now. He's in an unaltered prison, and he just his detention keeps like being renewed for 15 and 45 days till this day. My message to Biden would be to just remember these people, remember my father, and remember the thousands of others who are in his position and his same situation, because I do believe that my father is forgotten, and very much like many in his case, no one knows about them, and the authorities do not know about them. Just some police officer decided at some point to arrest them, and the judge doesn't care enough to question the police decision, and they just renew. So yeah, I want him to say his name and to make Sisi in a way look at these people and free them, because they are innocent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahma. And that was Rahma Fatin talking about her father, Saif Fatin, who has been in prison now far in excess of the legal maximum of 2 years that Egypt has that could legally allow for pretrial detention. And Rahma's father, Saif, as she mentioned, was added to the Hope case, which is actually the same case that Rami Shaath, who's here with us as well, was added to, and I think really underscores the fact that these cases are created simply as pretexts without any real evidence being brought forward. If folks like Saif Fatin or Amr Imam can be held for years with not a shred of evidence that's brought forward, it really speaks to the false nature of the accusations that are brought against them. We also have with us Mohammed Amasha. Mohammed is a PhD student at Yale, and his father is also detained. And Mohammed, we're really interested to hear from you, particularly given your dad's not only his human rights activism but his environmental activism. And of course, Egypt has been chosen as the host of the upcoming climate conference, the UN Climate Conference in November. Mohammed, would you like to share a little bit about your dad's case and any other messages that you might have for the audience.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I think it's critical that we come together and we keep talking, even though we're not sure about the results, but we do what we should do. So I'm going to be talking about my dad, and actually I'm talking about many others. So I'm going to be mentioning his name and talking about his activities, but I mean by that to highlight many others who are like my dad are detained. So my dad is now detained in an Al-Aqrab 2 prison, where actually Ala Abdel Fattah has been detained for a while before he was moved. But basically, like these two people, many others are suffering the grave violations of their rights. So my father is a veterinarian by profession, but his major work has been on environmentalism and human rights activism, especially with the families of the enforced disappeared. So, it's pretty interesting that Egypt has been chosen, as you just said, to be hosting that conference on climate change and so on, while detaining environmentalists. My dad, for example, played a crucial role at the time where Agrium, it's a petrochemical factory, was planned to be built in Damietta, one of the places on Nile and the sea at the same time. So, and he later kind of continued in his association of the Arab Association for Sustained Development and Environment. So these efforts that were kind of in collaboration with many other environmentalist groups like HABI and so on. I remember we used to go to in the environment, the International Day of Environment. We used to go to the Ministry of Environment, and we have protests and so on. But now they are detained and they are not allowed to speak about climate change while Egypt is hosting that. But not just this. I mean, Biden is going to be going to Trump's favorite dictator, and that dictator that has been, detaining thousands of people. My father's human rights activism, for example, like many others, he was trying to kind of help the families of that, who lost their family members due to enforced disappearance. So they don't know really where they are. And he and others like Ibrahim Mitwalli, for example, he's also detained, were kind of trying to, in a way, propagate their cause on one side, but also provide them a first-hand support, psychological and social support. These efforts are hindered as we go. These people are, every day we see one of these activists being detained, and they are not allowed in a way or another to get their chance to contribute at least to help the people who are politically detained. So even the activists who were supposed to, be kind of out of the political game and help the politically held prisoners, which should be also not acceptable. But the regime allowed no space for anyone, regardless of their ideologies, regardless of their status, like press members, activists, politicians, academics. Many, as a PhD student, I know that I cannot go to Egypt and have my fieldwork. There are many PhD students and academics who are detained in Egypt, and it's not a secure place anymore. And we know that in academia, being at Yale, everyone knows that Egypt is not a safe place. But despite that, Biden is going there, and we don't know whether that would have any improvement regarding human rights activism. Mentioning their name is important, and we know that it's important, and pressure is critical. Whether we will have results or not, we don't really know. But what we know is that we should continue speaking about these people so that one day they get their freedom.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Again, that was Mohammed Amasha, who's the son of detained activist, environmental activist Ahmed Amasha. And Mohammed, I think you raised, particularly as a scholar yourself, you raised a good point about, the chilling effect that detention might have, the chilling effect that travel bans have, that this extends not only to those who are currently detained, but that strikes fear into those who may actually want to study or to engage in politics. Some of the other researchers who have been detained in Egypt, Patrick Zaki, who has now been released but remains banned from travel. Ahmed Samir Santawi also recently received a sentence, or had his sentence confirmed in Egypt. We also mentioned the case earlier of Walid Salam, who is a researcher who is banned from travel in Egypt as well. Again, we're using the hashtag Say Their Names for those who may want to raise additional cases. You can use this hashtag between now and as Biden has his visit. He'll be arriving in Jeddah on Friday. Yasmin, I saw that you've unmuted. Were there any other cases or anything that's been said thus far that you wanted to reflect on as well for the audience?
Thank you so much, Alison, and thank you to Sulefa, Rami, Alia, Muhammad, and everyone who raised the voices of those detainees. We are in awe of your activism and your sacrifice, and my heart goes to all the families of the detainees. But also, it's not just about saying the names, it's about explaining the situation. I agree with Alia that a friendly visit to countries that has significant record of human rights abuses could embolden these countries to commit further abuses in the future, or it could encourage them to keep their policies as is. However, President Biden is going to be meeting with, let's say, President Sisi in Egypt. And I am saying that until last April, no Egyptian civilian was able to meet with President Sisi or anybody who is an official in this state to discuss the situation of the political detention and arbitrary detention, which has been endemic in Egypt in the last 7 to 8 years. So it's important now to explain some of the strategies and some of the plans that Egypt has announced recently and reveal the reality of those plans. Egypt has announced a new strategy for human rights that was months ago, or maybe a year. And until now, we haven't seen any real changes. While Egypt is announcing releasing detainees in rights cases, announcing numbers like 200 people were released since last April when the president enacted the new amnesty committee. However, let's say that Committee for Justice statistics, we documented over 500 new arrests since last April until now, which is far more than the releases Egypt is claiming to be solving the situation with. What I'm trying to say to President Biden, don't be fooled by strategies that are not really changing the situation, by efforts announced to only whitewash the reputation of states with significant record of abuses. I feel that this is the time to hear more talk about human rights. We are sick of seeing meeting readouts that says yes, and we discussed human rights only succinctly without explaining what did you discuss, what were the results. We need to be taken seriously this time, after a long-standing against human rights violations in those countries, after building his presidential campaign on a significant focus on respect to human rights. I feel this is a moment where we need to see this in action. We need to feel that world leaders who are committed to international law, calling on countries to commit to international law, we need to see this in action now. And it's not just a few cases. We are talking about hundreds of people, thousands of cases in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia of wrongfully detention, enforced disappearance, and even death. We have the U.S. State Department issued a statement on the murder of economic researcher Ayman Hadhoud. These things are going to continue. We're going to continue to see people dying in prison for medical negligence. We're going to see people are murdered slowly. We're seeing that, when Rami mentioned the Abu Futuh case, Abu Futuh, Salah Sultan, and others are deserving of a health release based on the Egyptian law itself. However, this is a state that does not abide by its own law. So I feel that this is the time to show us real commitment to human rights, and we are waiting to see this during this visit.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I want to welcome Bethany El-Hajri, my colleague at the Freedom Initiative and our Saudi case manager. Like Yasmin, Bethany is also a human rights lawyer. Bethany, did you want to speak about any of the cases that you'd like to share to the audience, or to reflect on, as Yasmin said, what might actual progress look like when it comes to Saudi Arabia particularly?
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Yeah, I just want to highlight some of the impact to U.S. persons who are facing repression from the Saudi government, because this involves the U.S. president's trip to Saudi Arabia. And it's difficult to imagine an outcome where the U.S. president would travel to Saudi Arabia and he would then return to the United States, leaving so many U.S. citizens, LPRs, and their family members behind in such dire circumstances. We're hoping that this won't be the outcome, but based on sentiments from the families that we do work with, the fear is that this may be the reality that we're facing in just a few days. So when we speak about U.S. persons impacted by Saudi repression, this includes U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, or their immediate relatives who are wrongfully entrapped in Saudi Arabia. This is due to wrongful detention, enforced disappearance, travel bans, or even repressive male guardianship and kafala laws in Saudi, which entrap citizens in the country. Now, when we consider all of that, we get into hundreds of cases of entrapment that we are aware of. And since there's so many more that we are not aware of, I imagine that's just the tip of the iceberg. In President Biden's recent Washington Post op-ed, he seemed to imply that all the U.S. citizens who were detained in Saudi Arabia were released. And while, yes, 2 U.S. citizens who were in jail were released in 2021, they remain under travel ban, which is essentially living a life in an open-air prison. And yes, 1 U.S. citizen who was detained and under travel ban in 2021 made it back home to the U.S., but not all U.S. citizens are out of jail in Saudi Arabia. We are aware of 1 U.S. citizen. It's a businessman who's in his 70s who remains in prison now and has been detained since 2020 and under travel ban since 2019. The U.S. government is aware of his case, as well as his deteriorating health condition, but until now, they haven't been able to secure his release. And that seemed to be ignored in the Washington Post op-ed. And given his dire circumstances, it should not have been. Dr. Walid Fatehi, Salah Haider, Badal al-Ibrahim are all U.S. citizens and former detainees who remain under travel ban in Saudi. Aziz al-Yusuf is a U.S. lawful permanent resident who remains under travel ban, and dozens of immediate relatives. We last counted in our 2021 annual report on repression from Saudi that there were 89 individuals who are immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, LPRs, who remain in detention, disappeared, or under travel ban. This includes Abdurrahman al-Sadhan, Salman al-Ouda, Mohammed al-Qahtani, and so many others. And it doesn't include the dozens of U.S. citizen women and children who are unable to exit due to male guardianship and kafala. So one would hope that progress, would be in this trip. It would result in their freedom and their ability to return home to the U.S. and be united with their family members and to live in safety, free from transnational repression, which impacts them even in our borders in the U.S. That's another conversation. But if it isn't the case that these people are released and able to come home, then it is my position that the administration's narrative of prioritizing human rights and the recalibration of the U.S.-Saudi relationship was really nothing more than just a narrative.
Thanks so much, Bethany, and thanks so much for raising the cases of some of those U.S. persons, American citizens, legal permanent residents, and family members, which I really think underscores, if even those who have U.S. citizenship, who hold U.S. passports, Biden will be traveling to Saudi Arabia and they remain detained. You know, any of those who are Saudi citizens, Egyptian citizens, or others, you know, are in an even more vulnerable position. I do want to turn back over to Solafa. Solafa, did you have any reflections on any of the conversation thus far, and what would progress look like to you as a human rights defender, journalist, and former detainee?
Yes, thank you, Alison, for giving me this opportunity again. I would like to say two small parts. One thing, I would like to mention many names of women. They are still in jail in Egypt, like as Hasiba Mahsoub. She started to spend 3 years behind bars. Because she is the sister of former minister Muhammad Mahsoub. Also Aisha Shatir, Huda Abdelmenem, Aya Kamal, Sumaya Maher, and other. The other small part I would like to mention about the journalism or journalists. They are spent many years behind bars. We need to continue our solidarity campaign. Without solidarity campaign, I wasn't be here right now and talking in front of all of you. Finally, I would like to say right now I became as a journalist in exile because my country doesn't respect the freedom of the press. As I spent year in police pursuits that end up with almost 2 years in prison. Right now, I am a journalist in exile because the Egyptian judicial system is not independent yet, because Egypt has become the 5th place worldwide in imprisoning journalists. Again and again, I would like to say the solidarity campaign. It's very important to help all of people there spent many years behind bars right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solafa, and thanks for raising these additional cases like Hasiba Mahsoub, Huda Abdelmonaim, and Aya Kamal. Rami, I'd like to turn it back over to you. I know we're approaching the end of the hour, but I'd like to give all the guests, you know, a chance to speak up one last time. Rami, anything to add on what progress might look like, the importance of solidarity, or any of the other cases you'd like to raise?
Thank you, Alison. I think this is an opportunity. It's a shame that we're meeting with those kind of dictators, but it's again an opportunity, and an opportunity before November, before the COP meeting in Cairo, before this flush of legitimacy that the military regime and the dictator will get. We need to secure the end of the detainees issue. We need to tell them free them all and free them now. There is absolutely no need for waiting, no need for long procedures. It's all related to Sisi's personal decision on arresting people. There is no law behind it. There is no legal cases behind it. There is no legislation behind that. It is just a decision of the dictator of this regime, and you're meeting this dictator. Tell him to free them all, free them now. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you so much, Rami. And I see Arij Al-Sadhan has just joined us. Arij, we'd love to hear from you. Arij is the sister of the Saudi humanitarian aid worker Abdurrahman Al-Sadhan, or excuse me, yes, Abdurrahman Al-Sadhan. Arij, it's over to you.
Thank you, Alison. And I'm sorry I was running late. But yes, thank you for hosting this space. I see it's titled Say Their Names. So yes, absolutely say their names. I'm sister of a humanitarian aid worker, Abdurrahman Sadhan, who continued to be forcibly disappeared. If you're following the story, the last time we've heard from him was in his appeal hearing, which was last year, basically. And since then, he continued to be denied any calls or visitations. So we as a family haven't heard from my brother since then, which is very stressful and very torturous to all of us. And of course, that means my brother most likely is going under serious human right violations from torture. Enforced disappearance, of course, by itself is a human right violation. He'd been in solitary confinement for years. Denying him any rights, including his legal rights, is another huge human right violation. Not to mention the 20 years sentence followed by 20 years travel ban by itself. Over tweeting is just cruel beyond any human conscience. So yeah, our message, especially, I mean, as an American citizen, I'm asking the President of the United States, say their names, say our relatives' names. You have this opportunity and this chance. If you're meeting with MBS, if you're meeting with the Saudi leaders, the least can be done is to say their names, ask for the release, stop this torture on us, following on your human rights promises to improve human rights and make human rights at the center of your policy, foreign policy. This is number one. And number two, also because, you know, your priority is also American citizens. So please do say their names, ask to free our relatives, ask to end this torture on American citizens and other human beings. So just, you know, to quickly say what I have in mind. Yeah, so basically, I hope we will hear some positive progress, and we hear the president, our President Biden, taking real steps towards human rights improvements and not just you know, forgetting about the campaign promises that he made previously.
Thank you so much, Arij. That was Arij Al-Sadhan, the sister of humanitarian aid worker Abdurrahman Al-Sadhan, who is imprisoned in Saudi Arabia. We've also heard today from Solafa Megdi, human rights defender and journalist and former political prisoner in Egypt. We've heard from my colleague Bethany Al-Hajdari, who shared with us some of the cases of US citizens, legal permanent residents, and their family members. We've heard from Yasmin Omar, human rights lawyer and the UN and regional mechanisms manager at the Committee for Justice. We heard from Rami Shah, Palestinian Egyptian human rights activist and former political prisoner. We heard from Rahma Fatin, who's the daughter of Saif Fatin, an environmental engineer and professor of environmental engineering, who's detained in Egypt. And we heard from Mohammed Amasha, who's the son of Ahmed Amasha, an environmental activist and human rights defender who's detained in Egypt. We also heard earlier from Ali Al-Hathlul, who's the sister of Lujain Al-Hathlul, a Saudi woman human rights defender who is on travel ban in Saudi Arabia. And I'm just going to share some of the other names that were said today who remain detained in Egypt and Saudi Arabia or on travel ban. And we'll end that way, encouraging all of you to continue to use the hashtag say their names so we can remember those like Alaa Abdel Fattah, Egyptian human rights activist. So we can remember Amr Imam, Egyptian human rights lawyer who's detained, Mohammed Al-Bakr, an Egyptian human rights lawyer who's detained in Egypt, Abdelmonaim Abu Futuh, who's an Egyptian politician who's detained and who's suffered medical neglect, Tawfiq Ghanem, an Egyptian journalist, Mohammed Assas, an Egyptian politician, both detained, Hisham Abdelaziz, a journalist detained in Egypt, Ahmed Samir Santawi, researcher detained in Egypt, Mohammed Assas, an Egyptian politician detained, Salah Sultan, the father of the founder of the Freedom Initiative, and another Egyptian detainee, Aisha Shater, who's detained in Egypt. So we can remember Abdurrahman Sadhan, Arij's brother. So we remember Mohammed Kahtani, a political activist detained in Saudi Arabia, Salman Al-Ouda, a religious scholar detained in Saudi Arabia, Huda Abdelmonaim, who's a human rights lawyer detained in Egypt, Ibrahim Metlawi, a human rights lawyer detained in Egypt. The list could go on and on. There are tens of thousands of political prisoners There are countless number on travel ban, and we're asking President Biden to please say their names when he meets with leaders of these countries this week, and in any recalibration of relationships with these dictators moving forward. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I hope that you do continue to use the hashtag, continuing to express solidarity and continuing to put pressure on President Biden to live up to his campaign promises. Again, my name is Allison. I'm the research director at the Freedom Initiative. Special thanks to all of our speakers, and we hope to see you all soon.